Don't give up. That's right. No, and you know, you know, a lot about what you do. You add a little phrase to it at the end. Whatever it says, and then say, good eat the sheep.
Hi, Claire. Can you hear me? Hi, Claire. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am, I can.
Okay, perfect. And I can hear you.
Good.
So
Yep.
I'll just keep you muted until time for your presentation.
Sure.
And I'll share my screen so that you can see the presentation. Is that okay? Or
That
did you
sounds
want to
great.
share yours?
Well, I might need to share mine for my presentation.
Oh, okay. Okay. Let me give you,
Oh, right, the
yeah.
sharing privileges. I forget
Why are
about
we
that.
laughing? Oh, I'm sorry. Um, I don't want to. Do I want to make her the host?
No.
I
Oh,
don't.
when it comes time, yes, so that way she can
Okay.
come over and share screen.
Okay, do you want me to go ahead and make you the host, or do you want me to wait?
Whichever you would prefer. I'm fine either way.
Because it doesn't allow me to do more than one. So I'm gonna just go ahead and make you the host,
Okay.
and then
Sure.
whenever we get to your item, then I'll move you over where the audience can see you and you can share your screen.
Sure. Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, now she can host. I'm scared. I'm nervous. Oh, she is.
Put my head in the touch room.
Meeting, if you would, please silence your mobile devices. Councilwoman, how are you doing? Good to see you. Oh, yeah?
Glenn, I still say the coach gotta go.
Okay. Hey, what, are we?
When the season's over. Yeah. Well, no, they need to go too, but. Yeah, he probably is. One more year.
Go ahead and get started, and
Adjustment there, but we're here.
We got a deal meeting. I'm sorry.
all right. At this time, the mayor will call to order the regular city council meeting for 6 p.m. Tuesday, October the 29th of 2024, in the city council chambers, 201 East Nash Street, Terrell, Texas. With us this evening are District 2, Donna Renee Anderson, District 4, Stephanie Holmes Thomas, Mayor Pro Tem, District 5, Phil Robinson, Deputy Mayor Pro Tem, and on her way, running a little late, is District 3, Mayrani Velazquez, I understand. So we do have a quorum. We can move forward with our meeting. At this time, I would like to invite Chad Neptune of Gospel Chapel Church in Terrell to do our invocation. If you would please come forward.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chad Neptune. I have the privilege of pastoring Gospel Chapel Church here in Terrell, and I reside in the Winter Circle community. I'd like to open this meeting with a prayer. Please bow your heads. Almighty God, we gather here tonight in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, to whom all honor, glory, and praise are due. We are grateful for the privilege of living and serving in this great nation, the United States of America. Lord, first of all, we thank you for the opportunity to serve the citizens of our community here in Terrell, Texas. Tonight, I give thanks for these dedicated servants, our mayor, our city manager, our city staff, and our city council members. We are grateful for their willingness to take up this path of service on behalf of us all. We ask you tonight for your divine protection over our police officers, our firefighters, and all first responders as they carry out their sworn duties each day. We pray also for our schools, for our superintendents, our teachers, and most especially for our students. Lord, we also lift up our healthcare workers, local business owners, churches, and community organizations who contribute daily to the health and vitality of Terrell. May they feel supported and encouraged in their efforts. Lord, help this council meeting to be fruitful and accomplish its intended purpose for our city tonight. Lord, please grant us wisdom, strength, and courage to make decisions that serve the well-being of our community. Please continue to bless the great city of Terrell, Texas, with peace and prosperity. In that precious name of Jesus, we pray. And they all said? Amen. Amen. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. Pastor, I want to thank you for being here with us this evening. We take very much pride in the fact that we support our faith-based community, and we look to you as we build our city and the importance that you guys give us as a city. But thank you for everything that you do. Here's some cookies to take back. And You're so good with some milk, man, I tell you.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you all.
All right, next on the agenda is mayor and council community recognitions and event. As we all know, Thursday, Halloween is approaching, and we want to, I want to take a moment and let you know what is going on in the city of Terrell. First, we have the Hulsey Public Library Fall Festival. That is on College Street. It's next to the Hulsey Public Library side on the lawn and Rockwall and Bryn Church of Christ parking lot. I think they're going to do a trunk or treat there, and if it rains, they may move that into the building. So be mindful of that as you're in and around that area. Please watch out for the little kids. Also, our annual downtown trick or treat, both sides of Moore Avenue will be used, and that event will go from 5 to 7. Again, we'll have a lot of children crossing. Parents will be with them, but be mindful of that and watch out for them. We also have the TFA Church Fall Festival. It's at 203 Main Street. That will go on from 6:30 p.m. until 9 p.m. We also have First Christian Church trunk or treat. So that is at 405 North Adelaide, and that event will be from 5 to 7. And then lastly, the Shops at Terrell at 301 Tanger Drive, and their trick or treat will begin at 6 p.m. and probably go until they're out of candy. So we hope that everybody has a safe evening, and please be mindful of the little ones if you're in your vehicle. Does anybody else have any community recognitions?
Yes. Today was the Kaufman County Jail for Bail fundraiser, and I would like to thank Jana and Jeremy, Martha and Snoop
I saw that photo.
for participating, along with Carton Tidwell from the EDC. But I wanted to, it was a wonderful morning, and we raised close to $700.
Wonderful.
Yes, we had other people call in.
Good. Great.
I want to thank our community partners for what they do during this time for our children. We like to see them get dressed up in their costumes, and even some of our fellow council members look cute too. So we want to appreciate them for putting that time and effort into that. And I also say, make sure you're careful during that time, because I know Moore Avenue and all the streets will be full of our children. Also, I just want to congratulate again Mrs. Daisy Dabney. She turned 94 years old. We were able to give her a proclamation and call October the 27th on Sunday was Daisy Dabney Day. And she served this community, and especially in her church, for over 46 years. And she even participated in a walk around the track. So that was pretty impressive for her to still be active and giving back and teaching all those years, the primary class, which was a young class under the age of 8. So I just want to say thanks to her again, and keep doing what you're doing.
Wonderful. Anyone else? All right. Next item on the agenda is to hear remarks from visitors. Arlie?
Yeah, Arlie has
Oh, sorry.
We're going to recognize an officer here.
Wanted to take the opportunity to reacquaint you with Cody Seabolt. Come on up, Cody. Cody came to us in 2015. He started in the jail as a detention officer, worked his way up. We eventually brought him on to the full-time sworn staff. He stayed here, let's see here, I got my notes, till around 2019, where we transferred him into the detective division. He served there until 2022, and then he decided that the grass might be greener somewhere else. He took a little tour over with Heath, and we managed to poach him back. His start date was the 25th last week, so relationships matter. People will come back where they're happy.
Right.
And so that's the goal and that's the focus, but we want to welcome Cody back. We're glad to have him back and wanted y'all to be reacquainted with him, so thank
Welcome
you.
back.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
You bet. Thank you. Next is to hear remarks from visitors. Do we have any? No. Boards and commissions. Oh, for the record, we do have Mayor Ronnie Velasquez, District 3, with us in the chambers. Boards and commissions, upcoming calendars. This is going to be handled by our City Secretary, Don Stahl.
Mayor and council, in your packet are the November and December calendars. If you'll notice, we'll have one meeting in November on the 5th. The British Bash will be on the 9th, and Shop at Home for the Holidays will be the 29th and the 30th. And we'll go to December. We will have meetings on the 3rd and the 10th. And then, of course, we have our Christmas festivities are all on this calendar too. And I will be happy to answer any questions.
Can I also make sure everybody notes the bright red on the bottom of both pages? We are searching for a date with our school district and the TEDC and the Park and Downtown Improvement Corporation. You know, we've often done a evening meal with them where we have a little bit of an occasion to have all of those 4 boards and council gavel in and then go through updates by each of those entities. We are looking for a Monday, either in November or December, to do that. There won't be business items on that, but that will be an opportunity to just sort of break bread with your other companions on those other boards. And then I did give you the note that we are, I don't know that we're guaranteed to do it, but if need be, given the gap between the 5th and then coming all the way back around to that December meeting, if we do need an executive session, we'll reach out and just schedule that individually, and you'll hear from Dawn if we decide we do need an executive session. Just wanted to note those couple items for you real quick also.
Well, Mike, you said exactly what I was going to say. We have one scheduled meeting in November, and we have 2 scheduled meetings in December. But if something comes up and we have to have a meeting, we will let you know. We'll try not to do that. But I think we should be upfront as a possibility. Then the other thing, I want to make sure that we all have the mayor and the council. In November, there is a Thanksgiving that's going on probably with
Breezy Hill.
Breezy Hill. Do we know the date of that?
Yes, it's November 23rd.
Could we put that on the mayor and the council's calendar, please? And then in December, I know there's always a service that is held within the community. And I'm not sure, I want to say maybe, who's?
We can get it. It's coordinated between the union and the association, so not a problem. Yeah, we'll get it.
Yeah, I seemed like I saw something, but I didn't put the date down, but I know it's in December, so if you could make that, we'd love to have you there as well. And if anything comes up that the mayor might need to attend and/or the council, please make sure that it gets put on our calendars. Those are not required, but if you want to show up and be part of the community, then we welcome you to do that.
Mayor?
Anything? Yes, ma'am.
May I? I know we have one in November, but I'm all about giving people some time off so they can spend quality time with their families. And if we can have one meeting in December, that would be, I think that's something we should consider. That we are parents, grandparents, you have grandchildren you love to see. So I think we should consider that towards the end of the year, it should be a time of gratitude and reflection and take a breath.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think that's why, if we're going to do 2, they were at the beginning of December, the first 2 weeks, and then coast through the end of the year with no meetings. However, we will look at and see if we can accommodate that. Okay? Anything else? Yes.
I wanted to mention the possibility, just the possibility, of thinking through the possibility of scheduling meetings during the day. as opposed to in the evenings. I don't know what the availability is for everyone, but I know for me, it would make no difference with my schedule, evenings or daytime. I don't know how the rest of council, what your commitments are during the daytime. I know it would probably benefit staff to have meetings during the day, during their typical work hours, as opposed to doing it in the evenings. And I know some cities do that, so I just thought, let's at least kind of explore the possibility going forward.
Yeah, no, I think some of the history related to why we meet in the evenings and at 6 is because some of the residents in the past had approached the council about, we were having them too early, and they weren't able to get home from work and then get to the council meeting because they wanted to attend. It wasn't so much the council objection, but was for that we could get participation from our community members. But if you want to look at that, that's certainly
sense.
something we could do.
Something to explore, but I see the point
Most of
there.
my district works,
Yes,
so they couldn't, they wouldn't be able to come.
During the day.
And so, for me, being transparent is having an opportunity for them to get here, say what they need to say, and so we can work through those things. But it's an opportunity for our community to get here and say what they need to say, or send a representative,
yeah.
Sure.
at least for my,
No, and that's why we're having the discussion. So, anybody else have any thoughts on it?
I would concur with the mayor and Donna Renee on providing an opportunity for our constituents to be able to come in, hear, speak, spread the news of what's happening in the city of Terrell. And then in addition, I do work during the day, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 typically. It may vary a little. So my preference and what has worked is to meet in the evenings. And of course, as we look at like retreats, et cetera, those are done in advance to be able to adjust work hours as well.
Okay,
And the discussion around it.
Yeah, no, also of note, for the council, on December the 5th, that's the Christmas staff breakfast from 6:30 to 9:30. I think that's the Christmas event, and there's no evening event, right?
Yeah, as we looked at it from last year, the overwhelming attendance and preference of staff was, we loved the breakfast, and there were just ran into too many difficulties with too many commitments and that sort of thing to make the lunch or evening as fun as it might be, and that's just the feedback we got. So we said, great, that's the feedback, that's what we'll stick to, and we'll get details out so that council can attend the staff breakfast as well. Happy to have y'all there.
Yeah,
and
then,
while our staff, there's a lot of our staff, I'm continuing to learn, that are behind the scenes. They do the work that no one sees. And we're going to be having, it's Thanksgiving, Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. And I would like to see, they're going to be working probably up through the Christmas parade. And I would like us to, as a council member, to lessen the load for them somehow, knowing that even though we can have 2 meetings, 1 meeting is going to give somebody some breath. But they're going to be from Glenn's group to DJ's, there is never ending. It would be nice if we could just give them some time to breathe. Does that make, my heart's going out to these people who serve, who work hard and work with what they have. And
Right. No, I meant, one of the things, and I hope that it's coming across to all of our employees, how much we appreciate each and every one of you, no matter where you fall within the organization. We couldn't do it without you. And so this is just an effort by some of the council members to work with and show you how much we appreciate you. But no, all of those comments are good, and we'll look at that calendar as we move forward. Anyone else? Next item on the agenda is discuss affordable housing study. This is going to be handled by our Director of Housing, Denise Simon, and Dr. Claire Knapp. housing economist, and she's on line with us, and I think she's going to share her screen with us as we move forward. But Denise, if you would, please go ahead and start.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I am here today with Claire Knapp. Her name used to be Claire Losey, but it's Knapp now. So back in March of last year, Claire gave a presentation to the council. And so after that presentation, we reached out to her to do a affordability study for the city of Terrell. So she has been working on that, and she's had some life changes, and the name change is one of them. So we finally have come before you today so she can present that information. At the time when she did the presentation back in March of last year, she was actually with Texas A&M with the Texas Real Estate Research Center. And after she did the presentation, we didn't know, but she left for greener pastures and went to the Austin Realtors Board, and so that's where she's working currently. And so she's here today to give you a presentation. I think you already have the document that she has put together regarding the city of Terrell. So I am going to pass it on to Claire so she can give you the information that she has put together for the city of Terrell.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much, Mrs. Simon. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. And can you all see the presentation?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. Excellent. So as Ms. Simon mentioned, I will be presenting on housing affordability within the city of Terrell. And I'm going to start by making a very bold claim, and that's that housing affordability is the most pressing issue that is currently facing our cities and communities across Texas. I know that you all feel this acutely within your own community, and it's the reason, the impetus for the study that you requested. But this is, certainly a large issue that we're facing. And that's validated largely by the fact that Americans across the board say that the availability of affordable housing is a critical issue in their communities. So from 2018 to 2021, we actually saw an increase of 10 percentage points in terms of the number of folks, the number of Americans who indicate that affordable housing is really a pressing issue for them. So as of 2021, about half indicated that affordable housing was really one of the top issues in their communities. And then to provide some brief information just in terms of what housing affordability is, how do we define it? What are we really referring to here? So overall, housing affordability measures the relationship between either home price or rent on the one hand, and then either household or family income on the other. And when we talk about affordability, it really helps to be able to break it down into two types. So we generally talk about owner-occupied housing affordability and renter-occupied housing affordability. And then when we talk about owner-occupied housing affordability, there are two different types of buyers that we could talk about. The first type of buyers would be repeat buyers. So these are move-up buyers. They're existing homeowners who are, purchasing another house, selling their prior home and purchasing another one. And then, of course, first-time buyers imply buyers that obviously are transitioning into homeownership for the first time. And then when we talk about affordability too, I mentioned that it measures the relationship between either home prices or rent on the one hand, and then household or family income on the other. The reason why we use income is because it is such a fundamental aspect of one's ability, a household's ability to acquire housing, to be able to access housing. So we know that, of course, on the rental side, landlords use income to be able to vet potential tenants. They're generally applying that 30% of income standard, i.e., looking at tenants who are going to be paying no more than 30%, spending no more than 30% of their income on their rent. And then on the buyer's side, we know that the vast majority of home buyers, especially here in Texas, use mortgage financing to be able to acquire homeownership. And income really is one of the key determinants. Income, wealth, and the credit score comprise the key determinants of a potential borrower's ability to access mortgage financing. So income is really imperative to the discussion on housing affordability. And then just a couple more slides, kind of just on housing affordability overall. So when we talk about affordability, there are demand side and then supply side factors that affect the equation. So on the demand side, it's very much determined by things like demographics. So for example, here we're talking about population growth, household composition, i.e. the age of householders, how many children, how many families, that idea, the size of the household, et cetera. There's also conditions in the labor market. So here we're talking about income and wages, and then, the unemployment rate, taxation, all that accompanies the labor market. And then the third demand side factor comprises changes in the cost of borrowing mortgage credit. So this is simply changes in mortgage rates. So of course, that's been a key issue over the past couple of years as we've seen a steady increase in mortgage rates nationally. And then lastly, on the demand side, there's consumer tastes and preferences. So that's just simply, what do households want in terms of their housing? Do they want single family homes, apartments, duplexes, condos, et cetera? And what range of diversity are they really indicating that they want? And then on the supply side, there are also 4 factors to consider. Of course, just the availability of land that is able to be developed. So whether that's vacant land or brownfields that are going to be transitioned into new developments. There's also, of course, factors on the planning side, so regulations and zoning. There are obviously very good reasons to impose regulations. They tend to get a bad rap, but of course, protecting the health, safety, and welfare of citizens through fire codes, building codes, et cetera. And then there are also regulations, of course, that can impose perhaps unnecessary strain on affordability. Here we might consider something like an environmental regulation. Obviously, can have a very good use, but can also really constrain affordability. And then the third factor on the supply side is construction costs. So here we're talking about the costs of construction labor and materials. So what you're paying your laborers to build that particular product, and then what you're paying for lumber, concrete, bricks, all of that good stuff. And then lastly, there's just the availability of mortgage credit, and legislation and national regulations really affect, the availability of mortgage credit, both to consumers and to the businesses that need to access that to be able to build housing. And then lastly, when we talk about quantifying housing affordability, when we talk about, really measuring how much home a household can afford, one of the most common ways to measure affordability, especially for owner-occupied affordability, is that home price to income multiplier. So generally for homeowners, a multiplier of 3, say anywhere between about 3 to 4 is what we would tend to see. So that would mean that, say, a household earning $50,000 annually would be able to afford essentially a $150,000 to perhaps a $200,000 home. And that's largely, the multiplier is what I'm using to derive the estimates that I have computed for this report. And that multiplier is derived from characteristics of households, mortgage financing, and then broader kind of more local characteristics to come up with that multiplier that is going to be applied to determine the maximum home price affordable to any given individual. And then when we think just kind of broadly in terms of defining the income cohorts within Terrell, so these income cohorts are actually more broadly defined for Kaufman County. And when we think about those income cohorts, there are 5. So extremely low income, very low income, low income, and then workforce and market rate households. In extremely low income, very low income, and low income cohorts, those income cohorts, those are defined by HUD. So all of these income limits are predetermined by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and they're actually used, they're broadly used to determine grant funding, the recipients of grant funding for the different types of housing programs. So when we think about each of these 5 income cohorts, so for example, extremely low income, their maximum income is going to be 30% of the area median family income. So very low incomes, folks, their range is going to be from 31 to 50% of area median income. For low income households, that's 51 to 80% of area median income. Workforce is 81 to 120% of area median income. And then market rate households are at least 121% of that area median income. So for example, I won't go through each of the family sizes, but say we're talking about, a 3-person family, an extremely low income household would then be earning less than $28,000 a year. A very low income household would earn somewhere between about $28,000 and $46,000. A low income household would earn somewhere between $46,000 and $74,000 annually. Workforce between about $74,000 and $89,000 annually, and then market rate is at least $89,000 and above. So that just gives you an idea of the breakdown when we're talking about each of those different income cohorts, kind of the thresholds that we're thinking about. So in terms of the results of the study, what the findings broadly indicate is that the lowest and the highest income households observed a shortage of affordable housing. And that rang true for really across the board. When, again, we're talking about repeat buyers, first-time buyers, and renters. So that rang especially true for the first-time buyers and renters. What you're seeing in this chart, any numbers that are depicted in red are indicating a shortage of affordable housing. So for example, when we think about extremely low income first-time buyers, we see that in the city of Terrell, there's a shortage of about 400 affordable homes. And then when we think about renters, extremely low income renters in the city of Terrell, there's a shortage of over 500 affordable rental units. For repeat buyers, what we see is that the shortage is most acute for workforce and market rate buyers. So again, these are folks who are earning at least 81% of area median income. So the shortage for those 2 income cohorts totals nearly 800 within the city of Terrell. So that just gives you an idea of kind of the overall landscape of the shortage of affordable homes or rental units within the city of Terrell. And then the black numbers, so I should say it's a zero-sum game. So where you see a shortage of affordable units, that necessarily means that there is, quote unquote, an oversupply of homes or rental units affordable to other income cohorts. So what we see, for example, for first-time buyers, with that shortage of extremely low, with that shortage of homes affordable to extremely low-income households, it's indicating that renters within that income cohort have to kind of quote unquote rent up, i.e. they have to spend more than is reasonably affordable to them to be able to rent a unit, to be able to access housing. And similarly, if we're thinking about, say the repeat buyers, when we think about that shortage of homes affordable to workforce and market rate buyers, what that is indicating to us is that they're dipping into the supply that is actually affordable to extremely low income, very low income, and low income households. So they're spending less than is reasonably affordable to them on their homes. Excuse me. With that being said, I still have, more results to present, but I just want to pause and make sure we're all on the same page and there are no questions about the interpretation of the chart.
Will you repeat that part where you talked about, is it the very low income people are spilling over or dipping into the reserve, what we have for the extreme low income? Is that what you said?
Yes, ma'am. So to clarify, when you see a shortage of, say, when you see a shortage of affordable housing within that extremely low income cohort, affordable to that extremely low income cohort, what that is indicating to us is that they actually have to spend more than is reasonably affordable to them on their housing unit. So, they have to spend, an extremely low income renter may have to spend the amount on rent that would actually be affordable to a very low income or a low income renter, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
So, yeah, this is Mayor Carmona. I'm wondering on your first-time buyers, I'm seeing a negative 399. On the renters, I'm seeing a negative 517. Are those individual units, or is that, how do you get, are those renters looking for?
That's a great question. This is representative of actual units.
Units that
So-
are available or aren't available in Terrell?
Correct. That's
So-
correct. Yes.
So percentage-wise, what would we be looking at if we wanted to say, for first-time buyers, does that represent 20%, 10%, 5? Is
great
there
question.
some way that we would be able to get a percentage, or where are we on that?
Great question. That's on a further slide.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, well,
No problem at all. That's a wonderful question, and I'll keep the ball
okay,
rolling.
let's wait on that. Yeah, go ahead. Oh, does anybody else count, any
I have one more
councilman?
question.
Yes.
Is it common to use the county's income when you came up with this
Yes,
slide
ma'am.
before? It's common to use the county?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
So the reason I used the income for the county is because HUD, and two, in recognizing that the idea for this report is to be able to potentially use it to apply for grants.
Okay.
So the way HUD works is they calculate those income limits on a county by county basis. They don't calculate them at the city level,
Thank you so
if
much.
that makes sense. The smallest geography that they're calculating income limits for is the broader county.
Thank you.
Dr. Knapp, just kind of for the sake of the audience and for everybody's understanding, if I'm looking at the renter column, I could say presumably there are 517 households that are wishing that they could get into a less expensive unit and would be thrilled if they could move out of wherever they are that's more expensive and move into something less expensive. That'd be a way of looking at it?
Absolutely. That's a
And-
very succinct way
Okay.
to bring it.
And then on the other side of it, presumably, there's 550, the 310 plus the 240. Presumably, there's 550 folks who, if a more expensive place opened up, they might move into it because it would be more matching what they
Right.
were hoping for in the market.
Exactly. That's exactly correct. And the same idea for the workforce and market rate repeat buyers, if there were potentially higher priced homes available, that might be more in line with their preferences.
Great, appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
So,
So-
can I go back? Can
Oh,
I
yes,
do
yes,
a
absolutely.
question?
Yes, sir.
So if we had more housing for the workforce in the marketplace, would that lessen, increase, or no change the numbers for extremely low income versus low income and very low income? Is there any relationship to that?
Great question. So generally speaking, when you add new supply to your market, keeping all else equal, then that is going to lessen affordability constraints across the board. So that's going to indicate that, your workforce and market rate households are going to kind of move up, if you will, in terms of home value or home price. And that's going to kind of free up more of the product that they had originally been residing in, that they had originally owned. That would free up more of that product for the lower income cohorts.
Okay, thank you.
One quick question for me, just getting my head around this.
Sure.
Kind of just to clarify for me, on the extremely low income level, why would we have, 85 homes for repeat buyers, but we're having a shortage for both first time buyers and renters? That's really dramatic. Like,
That is a great question. So it boils down to the fact that when we're talking about repeat buyers, there's, versus first time buyers versus renters, there's a much lower concentration of repeat buyers within that extremely low income cohort versus first time buyers and renters. And given just the supply of lower priced homes within the city of Terrell, that's creating this imbalance where there's actually an oversupply of homes affordable to repeat buyers. What we're seeing with first time buyers and renters, that shortage is really because demand within that particular income cohort is outstripping supply,
so
right?
there's just
And
more
there's a
people who are looking to
yeah,
buy
there's a
for the
much
first
higher-
time and rent, as opposed to those looking to buy a second home.
Right, there's
to
just a
repeat
much
buy.
higher concentration of extremely low income first time buyers and renters than there is repeat buyers. Repeat buyers are of higher income across the board. And that's largely a facet of the income gains from homeownership, and also just the fact that they tend to have matriculated more in the labor market, i.e. their repeat buyers tend to be older. They're kind of more so at peak earnings or potentially retired, whereas our first time buyers tend to be younger. They're just kind of starting out in the labor force, so their incomes aren't necessarily lower. And then renters also tend to be of lower income than homeowners, if that makes sense. Okay, I'll keep us moving and break it down by household size, because it does vary across household size. So when we're looking at repeat buyers specifically, the shortage is most acute among, as we saw in the previous slide, among those market rate repeat buyers. So again, current homeowners who are looking to purchase another home, sell their current home and purchase another home. And when we quantify it numerically, that number is highest for two-person repeat buyers in that market rate income cohort. So this just provides a little bit more of a breakdown by family size, so you can see where, the shortages are most acute. And then when we're applying the same practice for for first-time buyers, again, we're looking at shortages existing really along that extremely low income cohort range. So, the shortage is the highest among four-person households, first-time buyers at about 132 homes, and then followed by one-person first-time buyers at a shortage of 122 homes. And then lastly, before I get into the percentages, when we're looking at renters, again, the shortage being most acute for extremely low income and market rate households, so the lowest and the highest income renters, numerically, the shortage is the highest for extremely low income renters for one-person households, and the same for market rate renters. And then in terms of, I'm going to move into the percentages as the mayor asked, but I just want us to get a sense of the census tracts, because you're going to see a lot of different geographies depicted on the next couple of slides. So of course, this region that encompasses, it may be hard to see, but this is Census Tract 503, 505, this is 504.01, and then 504.02. Those 4 census tracts really encompass the city of Terrell, but then you also have these outlying tracts within the county itself that still, contain some of the city limits. So 506.01, 506.02, and then 507.01 and 507.04. But again, when we're thinking about the city of Terrell, we're really thinking about these 4 these 4 census tracts, 503, the 504s, and 505.
So just stay on that one for a second, so we're all clarifying. 506.2 is going to be out close to Hams Beach Orchard. So you're basically taking from 429 and going east north of Interstate 20. 507.04 is going to be shops at Terrell, Kings Creek neighborhood, that sort of area. The 507.01 is easy to see because that's going to be all the new stuff at Crossroads. If you go up around that, it's 506.1. That's going to be the North Spur development. And then, of course, all of the stuff that we've done in the last 10 years, really, of annexing up and seeing some development stuff going up State Highway 205 and State Highway 34. And then, obviously, those 4 in the center are a little bit easier to see. And so I'm not going to detail those, but that's a little bit of help on the geography. So I'll let you go from there, Dr.
Very
Knapp.
much. I appreciate that.
Mayor, I have a question about the data, and what years are the data you're utilizing from? What years are they being used from, and are they being used? Did you pull the data from like the census, and if so, like
That's a great
when was
question.
the latest? Was it
Sure.
the 2010, or was it the updates
Absolutely.
they make every so years?
That's a great question. So to clarify, this is all 2023 data. And I'm using data, it's difficult to see, but like, for example, at the bottom of this particular table, I'm using data from the Federal Reserve, Freddie Mac, the Census Bureau, and then I'm applying my own calculations. So, to clarify, when we're talking about, say, the Census Bureau, they have published data, up to through 2022, and I applied an upward revision to that historical data to determine the numbers for 2023. But overall, it's reflecting 2023 figures, if that makes sense.
So since 2023 data, let's say, we were wondering, well, we're in 2025 now, any homes that, I'm not sure what the correct terminology is when you go through like Freddie Mac, as an example, you would say, okay, the house has been built or the house has not been sold yet, or how do we know which houses not to include, would have not been included in the calculations? Like if they've been sold or they're currently being built or there's an active lease?
Sure. That's a great question. So broadly, we don't tend to see large changes on a year-to-year basis. It tends to happen over the course of time. And these numbers can certainly be updated to reflect the 2024 numbers. It's just that when you're working with this kind of data, you are looking at historical data. You aren't necessarily, you're constrained in that you can't necessarily look at data in real time, and you especially can't look at data ahead of time because you can't predict 100% what that will be. So that's just a very convoluted way of, again, just reiterating that broadly, the numbers might change slightly, on a year-to-year basis, but the overall finding does not. For example, just the notion that there's the shortage across the household size for extremely low-income renters, for example, that sentiment is not going to change. In 2025, it might be that there's a shortage of 200 rental units for one-person households. But, you know, again, the underlying sentiment is going to be there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I was just trying to make sense of, you know, if staff says we have 500 homes in this price range, then, and they're being built in this census, you know, a specific census tract, then we could say, okay, we're making an improvement, and we should see that improvement reflected in.
Can I offer to you that I think that's going to be a really hard thing to answer, because what's also happening is that the demand side isn't staying the same. If I'm adding 6-7% to the population of the county every year, and we're delivering homes that are, you know, 2 or 3% of our housing stock, you know, it's hard to put your finger on, well, exactly how did it change this year? I don't think there's a shorthand way of saying, okay, you know, 5,000 new people moved to the county, we built 1,000 new houses or apartments here this year. How exactly did it change? I don't think you could crystal ball that. I think you'd have to redo the study whenever you had the new data come in.
Okay, that answers my question.
Yes, ma'am. And yes, what the gentleman, you know, just said, I would agree with, but that's not to dismiss, you know, very much respect the fact that you want this data in real time, and there's a need to have it in real time, and want to, you know, acknowledge that, very much understand that sentiment. It's a difficult, complex, ever evolving process. So kind of just the last couple of data points. There's a lot more data in the report, but I didn't want to overwhelm you all. In the report, I should say, I break it down by each household size. I won't go through that in my presentation, trying to stick to kind of more general findings. But if you want to see the results by household size, you know, please feel free to look at the report for more detail. So just in thinking, moving into the percentages, I promise, just in thinking again about the disparity in affordability across those income cohorts and comparing it to similar geographies and just the state more broadly, what we really see is that, you know, for example, we're looking at repeat buyers, you know, within the city of Terrell and just the county more broadly. You aren't seeing that shortage of affordable homes for repeat buyers that you do in Texas and the DFW MSA. So, you know, you don't see the shortage of homes affordable to very low income repeat buyers that you see in the DFW area in Kaufman County. Where you do see consistency among all of those geographies, you know, again, really here talking about Texas, DFW, the county, and the city, where you do see consistency for repeat buyers is that there is that shortage of homes affordable to market rate households, market rate repeat buyers, i.e. that there is, you know, a demand among those market rate buyers for higher priced homes. So that's, again, the consistency within the data among those larger geographies. And you can see how it plays out within the census tracts as well. So again, if we're thinking about really kind of the central city, again, 503, the 504s and 505, you know, you can go step by step and look at the shortage of homes affordable to repeat buyers within that market rate income cohort. And the shortage is most pronounced within 504.01, short of almost 500 affordable homes. In terms of looking at it on a percentage basis, so just to break this down, I know it can be a little bit overwhelming, but what you're seeing is that, in essence, any value that is at least 1 indicates that there is an oversupply of affordable units, whether that's affordable homes or affordable rental units. There's an oversupply if the value is at least 1. And then if the value is under 1, that indicates that there's an undersupply of affordable homes or rental units. So for example, the interpretation for the city of Terrell for extremely low income repeat buyers is that there is 20% more homes affordable to them than need be for extremely low income repeat buyers. Again, looking at the city of Terrell. For very low income repeat buyers within the city of Terrell, that 1.6 figure is indicating that the supply of affordable homes within that income cohort outpaces demand by 60%. Now, when you get to the workforce and market rate cohorts for repeat buyers within the city of Terrell, that workforce figure of 0.7 indicates that the supply of homes, a supply of affordable homes relative to the demand is only 70% of that demand. And then for market rate, it's only about 40%. The supply of affordable homes for market rate repeat buyers is only about 40% of the demand within that income cohort. Does that make sense? I know it can be really confusing.
Yes, thank you. And this is Mayor Rick Carmona. As we address Dr. Knapp, please identify yourself because we're on Zoom and she may have difficulty in recognizing each of the council members. But thank you for this information. We want to continue with your presentation, but if you would, council, as you address her, please introduce yourself. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. And I'll repeat the interpretation of these percentages as we move into first-time buyers and renters as well. But just, to linger for a minute more on the slide for repeat buyers, when we're looking within census tracts that are in and around the city of Terrell, again, where we see the largest discrepancy or the largest shortage, most acute shortage of affordable homes is for those market rate repeat buyers within that 504.01 census tract. We also see a fairly high shortage within 503. So the supply of affordable homes, affordable to market rate repeat buyers within census tract 503 is 30% relative to the demand for those homes. So moving on to first-time buyers, we see really here a consistency in the shortage of homes affordable to first-time buyers within that extremely low-income cohort. So for example, across all geographies, you're seeing a shortage of homes affordable to extremely low-income first-time buyers. And then we see less consistency as we move, up the income ranges. So for example, for market rate first-time buyers, we see a shortage of homes affordable to them within the city of Terrell and some of its census tracts, but not within the larger geographies of the county, DFW, and Texas more broadly. In terms of just the numeric shortage of homes affordable to first-time buyers, it ranks the highest in census tract 505 at approximately 250 units or 250 homes short. So that's just something to consider moving forward. When we talk about the percentages, kind of quantifying it a little bit more, that breakdown. So for example, in the city of Terrell, the interpretation for extremely low income first-time buyers, that 0.5 figure, that indicates to us that the supply of homes affordable to those extremely low income first-time buyers is only meeting demand by about half. The supply is only about 50% of the demand for those homes. Where you see numbers that are depicted in red, numbers that are 1.0, but they're depicted in red, that just indicates that the figure is 0.95 or 0.96, et cetera. I only stuck to one decimal point, but if you're wondering, no, it can be confusing, but if you're wondering, there is a reason why some of the 1.0 figures are depicted in red. Again, it's because they're 0.98 or something like that. They're just under 1. But when you're thinking about these percentages, we're looking at, say, in Census Tract 505, for extremely low income first time buyers, you see that the supply of affordable homes relative to demand is about 60%. And then, if you're looking at market rate first time buyers, the supply of homes affordable to those particular buyers in Census Tract 504.01 is only about 10%. So demand far outpaces supply on a percentage basis within that particular census tract. So again, this is really positioning, these percentages are really, they're positioning the supply of homes or the supply of rental units relative to demand within that particular income cohort.
Ms. Knapp,
And then lastly, excuse me, sorry.
Phil
I think
Robinson, City Council District 5. Just to understand, so when you speak of demand, are we talking about demand in terms of the people who live in Terrell currently, or who are projected to move to Terrell in the future? What are we thinking there in terms of demand?
That's a great question. It takes into account both. So, both existing first-time buyers within the city of Terrell, and then also, accounting for folks who moved in, or were planning to move into any particular geography within in 2023 within that time frame. If that answers your question.
I think it does. So the thought would be, in the case of, say, the city of Terrell, looking at market rate, being that we have a 1 here, then we need 100% more high-end housing or housing that will accommodate the people in that market rate cohort to accommodate both our existing citizens and future citizens.
That's a great question. So it'd actually be, and I know it's super confusing. So the interpretation would be that, for example, in the city of Terrell, for that extremely low income cohort, you need 50% more housing affordable to that income cohort for first time buyers. But when you see a figure of 1.0, and again, it's in red because it's like, 0.98 or something, that is actually indicating that it's a pretty balanced market for very low income first time buyers, and the same for market rate. When you see a figure above 1, that's where it's really indicating, like say low income first time buyers in the city of Terrell, that's indicating that there's 50% more homes affordable to that income cohort than you really need, because supply is outstripping demand by 50%, if that makes sense.
So again, Dr. Knapp, this is Mike Sims. To illuminate it for the audience, because we got quite a few people in the crowd here, I'll see if I can use this analogy. If I want to talk about the very low income city of Terrell, you're rounding it. So let's just take a generic 100, right? That might mean that, hey, there's 97 units available, and we sure do need 3 more in order for that to be right on target.
Sure.
But whereas for extremely low income, if you needed 100, we only have 50. And that's kind of the way you might think about looking at those numbers, because they're not necessarily intuitive, but if you beat it against your head a little bit, it'll go in there. I just want to use that as an example for the audience again. So thank you, Doctor.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think that really helps break it down. Sorry, we academics can live, too much in our ivory tower. So thank you very much for, helping me to break it down. And then just, sorry, was there one more question?
I represent
Yes.
District 4. Okay, I'm just trying to look at this column where the city of Terrell. What I see is there's a shortage, and tell me if I'm interpreting this right.
Sure.
50%, we need 50% more for extreme low. We're pretty much okay and equal. We have what we need for very low workforce. We got a little over. And then market, rate, we're okay.
Correct.
We're
Correct.
pretty even. But we have a surplus first-time homeowners or buyers, 1.5 and 1.1 under low income and maybe workforce. We have a surplus in the black ones, right?
That's
Is that what
correct.
they're saying?
That's
And
correct.
then the very low income and the market rate, we're even, we're okay.
That's right, right.
And the 50% is where we're falling short, is with the extreme
Correct.
low income people, trying to
Correct.
get them into a
Right.
house if
And
they want to buy it.
That's absolutely correct.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I think I
And
understand it.
to also provide more context, the farther any of these numbers are from 1.0, the farther the number is from 1, whether it's on higher or lower end, that indicates that the disparity between supply and demand is larger.
Gotcha.
So for example, if you're looking at this 0.9 figure for 503, that's still essentially relatively balanced. 0.9 is, relatively close to 1.0. But for example, this, 0.3 figure for 507.01, 0.3 is obviously much, much farther from 1 than 0.9. So you're looking at more of a disparity between demand and supply within this particular income cohort in this census tract. The same holds true if you're looking at oversupply. So, the 6.6 figure, for example, that indicates that there's a much, much larger extent of oversupply than, say, this 1.2 figure. Does that help provide more context?
It does. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for your questions. And then moving on to the last couple of slides, just touching on renters. So we also see, similar to our first-time buyers, we also see consistency in the shortage of affordable rental units for the extremely low income cohort across essentially all of our geographies. We see this shortage within Texas, DFW, the county, and the city. And then, 7 out of 8 of the census tracts in and around the city of Terrell. And then likewise, we also see a consistently, significant acute shortage of affordable rental units within this market rate income cohort across geographies. So, thinking about the interpretation, the implications within the rental sphere, where we really see the most acute shortage in and around the city of Terrell is within Census Tract 505. So you're short about 400 rental units affordable to the extremely low income cohort, and then also short about 150 units affordable to that workforce cohort. You also see a fairly large shortage of affordable rental units for those market rate renters within 506.02, and then likewise for extremely low income renters within Census Tract 503. So just highlighting, some of the particular census tracts in which you're seeing the most acute shortage in numerical terms of affordable rental units. But to transition into percentage terms, for example, within the city of Terrell, when we're thinking about this extremely low income cohort, supply is only about 40% meets only about 40% of the demand for those rental units affordable to the extremely low income cohort. And then likewise within our workforce cohort in the city of Terrell, supply only meets about 30% of demand for those renters. And then the shortage is very acute within this market rate rental for market rate renters, there's really, a very significant need for more quote unquote affordable rental units. I realize that they're the highest income cohort. Obviously, they're looking at the units with the highest rent, but kind of quote unquote more affordable rental units for those market rate households where, for example, in the city of Terrell, supply only meets about 10% of the demand. And then again, thinking, across the different census tracts in and around the city of Terrell, where we really see acute shortages are in that 505 and 506.01 and then 507.01 census tracts. We're seeing that supply only meets about 30% of the demand among the extremely low income cohort within census tract 505. And then there's essentially, there's such a dearth of affordable rental units for extremely low income renters within 506.01 that the percentage is near zero. It's maybe 4% or whatnot, and that the supply of affordable rental units is only, about 4% of demand. And then we also see a very, very low percentage of affordable rental units relative to demand within this market rate cohort. So again, where you're seeing these figures that are 0.0, again, it's essentially, it's something 0.04, 0.03, i.e. it's such indicating that there's an extreme shortage of affordable rental units relative to the demand for those units within that particular income cohort. So that being said, that concludes my formal presentation. I know this was a lot of information to unpack, and I'm more than happy to go back to any of the slides and review the information and talk it over more, but want to really open the floor to more questions and more discussion.
So, Dr. Knapp, I'll just throw in one more clarification again for everybody here, since the geography is so hard to look at and not necessarily intuitive with census tracts. One way to look at this is if you take all of the census tracts she's showing you, 503, blah, 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 all the way to the end, all of those are almost exactly the Terrell Independent School District boundary. It's a little bit larger, but it's kind of sort of more or less like looking at the TISD boundary when you take all of the columns that she's shown you. So just want to, put that in your thinking while you're mulling it over. And then staff does have one slide that comes after all of this, but much better to stop here and chat before we move on to one PowerPoint slide from staff.
All right, Dr. Knapp, this is Mayor Carmona. I was as I'm looking at the performance of the city itself, when we look at how we're doing compared to Dallas-Fort Worth and the Arlington area and the Kaufman County, the city's numbers seem to me to be, we're in a better position than those two. Yes or no?
That's a great question. And thank you for asking that so we can focus more on that geographic comparison. So for renters, it really does depend on which income cohort you are referring to. So if we're looking at, say, very low income or, even low income renters to an extent, really, the city of Terrell is performing for very low income renters, it's performing better than Kaufman County, certainly than DFW or even Texas with respect to the fact that it has a larger oversupply of rental units. If you're looking at 1.5, again, indicating that supply outpaces demand by 50% versus, 40% in Kaufman County and 10% in Texas. And then, of course, DFW is seeing an undersupply of affordable rental units. So yes, within this very low income cohort, you could certainly say the city of Terrell is outperforming its peers. But for example, if you're looking at the workforce income cohort, where you're seeing 0.3 for the city of Terrell versus 0.6, 0.9, and 0.8 for those other geographies, the city of Terrell is actually performing worse in the sense that the extent to which the supply of rental units, affordable rental units, meets the demand for those units is lower on a percentage basis within the city than it is in the county or for DFW or Texas.
Okay.
Does that help clarify?
Yeah, yeah. Well, so I guess, because you're used to seeing these, this data more than
Right.
the mayor and the council, what should the council take away? What should the mayor take away from the data that you presented us when it comes to how are we doing with our low income versus just the workforce and the market rate? Are we okay? Are we worse than other communities our size? Or how do we absorb this information and then put it to good use for the council moving forward?
Great questions. So overall, I would generally, offer the position that a shortage of affordable housing for the lower income cohorts is going to be more pressing to resolve than for the higher income cohorts. And why is that? It's just because, the lower income cohorts, if you're seeing a shortage of affordable housing for them, that means they're spending more than is reasonably affordable to them on housing. If you're seeing a shortage of, affordable, kind of quote unquote, affordable units or homes for workforce or market rate households, that indicates that generally speaking, they're spending less than is reasonably affordable to them. So, they could maybe afford to purchase say, $600,000 home or a $700,000 home, but they're really buying, maybe a $500,000 home. So it is too, it's a little bit subjective, but, generally speaking, I think most folks would probably take the stance that it might be a little bit more pressing to address the shortage for folks who are spending more versus less, spending more on housing than they can reasonably afford. As to with respect to the other facet of your question, other aspect on just comparing the city to its peers, again, it's really it just depends on which particular income cohort you're looking at. If you're looking at that, if you're focusing on the shortage of affordable rental units to the lowest income cohort, that 0.4 figure, it's underperforming with respect to Kaufman County and Texas, but the city is faring better than DFW. So it really does depend. And it's different among the three types of households, repeat buyers versus first-time buyers versus renters. So I know that's, I know that's not a helpful answer, but, it's really kind of with that respect, it's not necessarily a clear-cut takeaway.
Oh, okay, Dr. Knapp. Then one more question.
Yes, sir.
As it relates to affordable units, whether they're first-time buyers, renters, or in any of the other categories, is there any community that you're aware of that doesn't have an issue with this?
No, sir,
because
no.
we've got to put our minds around it and understand that no matter how hard we try, if we're looking for the perfect solution where we have zero people looking for low income housing, that's probably not a realistic goal for any of us, but that we can do better. I agree we can do better, but you see where I'm trying to get to is
Yes.
at what point do we say, you know what, we've done and made policy for the best positioning the city in the best possible way, and yet we still have an issue with it. Can you help me on that a little bit?
Absolutely. Great questions. So overall, I've done a very similar type of study for, I think, over 15 cities and communities across Texas, from very large cities to, small communities. And, overall, there's consistently always going to be a shortage of affordable rental units and homes affordable to first-time buyers within that extremely low-income cohort. And that, again, is a function of the high percentage of households within that income cohort relative to, especially the higher income cohorts. There's just more households on a percentage basis within those lower income cohorts. And then two, it's just very, very difficult for the market, and I'm speaking particularly of the private market, to be able to supply housing that is affordable to the lowest income cohort. That is affordable to extremely low income or very low income households even. When you're talking about trying to put housing on the ground that is affordable to households earning less, 50% or less of area median income, that's going to be really difficult. We're talking about putting homes on the ground for, say, a 2-person household that are under $100,000. In today's market, that's going to be really, really difficult. So it's, excuse me, it's also just a facet that providing low-income housing is just a challenge for builders and developers. And that's why, cities and communities rely on government funding, is in part to help subsidize those costs to some extent. But yes, to answer your question, this problem is absolutely not unique to the city of Terrell. And the fact that, as I talked about at the beginning of the presentation, 50% of Americans, almost 50% of Americans, see affordable housing as the most pressing issue in their communities. You're certainly not alone in this aspect. And again, can't stress enough the consistent shortage of housing that is affordable to extremely low income and very low income households that I see across, cities and communities in Texas.
Thank you, Dr. Knapp. I'll turn it over to the council. Council, again, if you would, as you address Dr. Knapp, introduce yourself and then ask your questions.
Dr. Knapp, this is
Yes, ma'am.
Stephanie again. Have you looked at our numbers as it relates to our housing department and the subsidies we get as far as the individuals we have that may be getting assistance or may be getting a housing voucher? Does that impact this report any? Did it help the extreme low numbers look better? How did that play out?
Oh, that is a great question, and one that is so complicated.
Okay.
So when we think about housing choice vouchers, unfortunately, only about 25%, so only about 1 out of every 4 households that needs assistance actually and applies for the housing choice voucher actually receives that voucher. So the demand far outpaces the supply of those vouchers. So to answer your question, yes, folks who, reside within any of these geographies who have received those vouchers are accounted for in the data, but by default, just the nature of the program itself means that there's, again, the demand is going to far outpace the supply. So in terms of the effect, it tends to be small within that housing choice voucher program.
Thank you.
Hi, Ms. Knapp. Phil Robinson, City Council District 5. A couple questions for me. So just to clarify, for market rate, by affordability, it's a bit of a misnomer. What we actually mean is just homes that are in their desired price range, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it fair to characterize that for most of the categories discussed, Terrell's primary shortages are in the extremely low income range and in the higher end market rate housing range? So it's just the high end, or low end. Everything
That's
in the middle is pretty standard for our
Relatively
geographic
well
region.
balanced.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. That makes sense. I think that gives us some direction. I like to simplify these kinds of things to kind of give us
Sure,
some direction for our policymaking. One of the things I wanted to kind of understand a little more deeply, it's such a double-edged sword. You know, there's the whole adage, if you build it, they will come. So in some ways, when you're planning these kinds of things, you're kind of deciding what kind of city you want to be in a way, kind of what you're pursuing. You know, if you're building more sort of higher income housing, you're kind of trying to target, I would think, your kind of upwardly mobile families, folks with sort of pursuing kind of white collar careers, those kinds of things. I just kind of want to understand from your perspective, how should a city approach using this data to kind of plan ahead towards, you know, what kind of demographics and what you're looking to become as a city? How do you utilize this information to plan
Sure.
ahead?
That's such a great question. So overall, just in recognizing the fact, as I was, you know, talking before about how difficult it is for the private market, which is the primary builder in terms of new housing, how difficult it is for them to be able to supply homes or rental units that are affordable, especially to extremely low income and very low income households. You know, again, we're thinking about households earning 50% or less of very immediate income. You know, so within the city of Terrell, you're essentially looking at homes priced kind of around $100,000 or rental units 500 or less. So it's going to be very hard, I think, very challenging to rely necessarily on the market to be able to meet that need without some sort of subsidy. The other option, though, is within the homeownership, you know, talking about homeownership, when you're thinking about first-time buyers, for example, to develop a down payment assistance program. And there's also options through the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs. So there are certainly statewide down payment assistance programs, but to help, you know, that especially the lowest or lower income cohorts, you know, really get through the door in terms of being able to access mortgage financing, because they're, you know, tend to be fairly restricted by income, wealth, and credit. So having that ability to, you know, receive, say, obviously with a down payment assistance program, you know, you're receiving help on the wealth end of that. You know, you're receiving aid in terms of a down payment. You know, it tends to be maybe $5,000 to $10,000. It could be a percentage of the purchase price, or it could also just be a set amount. But even that small amount, relatively small amount of money in terms of, you know, thinking about the home price itself, that small amount of money really helps them overcome that obstacle of not necessarily having sufficient savings in the bank to meet the down payment requirements, if that makes sense.
It does. Last question for me. Just from my understanding, I'm trying to kind of get my head around, you know, we have a shortage of extremely low-income housing. What does, in real world terms, what does an extremely low-income residence look like? Are we talking about like a efficiency apartment? What are we talking about in terms of the kind of house that would meet that need, or the kind of residence that would meet that need?
Sure. Gosh, that's a difficult one. So the primary way lower income housing is currently supplied in the US is through the low income housing tax credit. It's called the LIHTC program. And among any of the federally subsidized programs in the US, that particular program, the LIHTC program, receives the most funding by far, you know, especially relative to, say, housing choice vouchers. And LIHTC, it's a public-private partnership. It essentially subsidizes private developers to go out and build affordable market rate or affordable multifamily units. Those units they can go as low as that 30% range. They can be affordable to extremely low income households, but really with LIHTC, they're generally affordable to either very low income or low income households. Tend to be along that 50 to 60, maybe 50 to 80% of area median income. Their rental units tend to be affordable to those folks. So, trying to work with developers, there's certainly a lot of LIHTC developers within DFW, but trying to work with them could be, certainly an option for you all to just try to put more affordable inventory on the ground. And they may be able, to meet the demand for that extremely low income cohort. Generally, they're going to be looking at higher income cohorts when they're in larger cities, but can potentially meet the need for the lowest income cohorts when they're working within smaller communities. So that's, that is certainly an option that could be available to you all. And, you would apply for credits. It's a convoluted process, but you'd apply for that funding from the federal government, and then you'd work, with private developers to build that housing. I'm sorry, did I answer your question? I think I went on a tangent.
No, I think you did. So basically extremely low-income housing would be basically subsidized housing.
Right, and that's on the rental side. But yeah, with for homeowners, probably down payment assistance, because again, it's just going to be really difficult to build homes that are going to be affordable to that income cohort. It's right now, just within the state more broadly, you'd be very hard pressed to be able to build a home for under $150,000. I mean, you're talking more like at least 200, just to build a very basic starter home.
Understood. Thanks for the information.
Absolutely. Thank you for your question.
Dr. Knapp, this is Mayrani Velasquez for District 3. And I feel like I'm getting the gist of how we can support or improve access to low-income housing in the city of Terrell, either one for non-rental homes, which would be subsidized assistance, government assistance, like with the down payment program through the Department of Community Affairs, or for rental homes, then the city would apply for like the LIHTC program, that's a federal tax credit, and then we would seek developers to work there. That's what I'm capturing. My question is, aside from that, if we have in the city of Terrell, if our greatest need is low income and then also the market rate cohort, would I be right in assuming that because we have less of those, that then we are those seeking, or those needing, those in those cohorts are then moving over to like the workforce, or maybe even just the low income cohort? And for the rental side, it would, because we have a lack in both extremes, that it would push the rental rates up and make them higher for those in that medium brackets?
That's a really great question. So overall, when we think about increasing the supply within the market, when we think about increasing the supply of housing units, whether that be homes or rental units or both, keeping everything else equal, assuming demand stays the same, that would actually reduce the price of the home or the rent itself. So, if you're increasing your supply, it should actually work to diminish some of those affordability constraints. It would really, if you target that housing to to make it affordable to income cohorts with the shortages, then you'll see even more of a reduction in those affordability issues or constraints.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. And then just to reiterate, to kind of piggyback off your question, the idea is that with more housing, especially with more housing that is affordable to the lowest income cohort, that allows them to, then spend an appropriate amount of their income on that particular housing unit. So instead of spending, say, 50% of their income on rent, they would, then be more spending more like 30% of their income on rent.
Dr. Knapp, this is Stephanie again.
Yes,
Go
ma'am.
back to the slide where you showed us the income requirements as it
Yes,
relates
ma'am.
to
Yeah, the income
extreme,
limit.
and you divided the cohorts.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when I look at this for extreme low income, this is the challenge. I want to see, with our property values and things going up so much in the last 3 to 5 years, is it realistic to use this home price to income multiplier to say, hey, a person, family of 4, 30,000, they should be in a house, 90,000 to 120,000. Is that realistic to use this? And is this something that we use across the nation or Texas, this home price income multiplier?
Yes, that is a very, very wise question. So the short answer is yes to what you asked about whether the multipliers use nationwide. It is. And that's generally the range that lenders themselves are looking at. It very much depends on, the particular individual, the particular household. But by and large, we see that most borrowers tend to purchase a home between 3 and 4 times their income. So again, if you're thinking about a household earning, say, $46,000, a family of 3 within this very low income cohort, they can afford essentially a home price of, say, 140,000 to, 185,000, or however much it is. So it does bear out across geographies. It's not localized to the city of Terrell. The multiplier itself isn't localized. The concept of it isn't localized to the city of Terrell. It's in use across the nation. What is specific to the city of Terrell is some of the inputs to determine that multiplier. So that, provides a little bit more individuality to it, specificity to it. But overall, when we think about the multiplier too, I realize a range of 3 to 4 can be very high. If you're thinking about a household earning $100,000 annually, that's a home price between $300,000 and $400,000. The variation, that fluctuation, is largely determined by mortgage rates. So we've seen mortgage rates increase pretty significantly over the past couple years. So now the multiplier is closer to 3 than it is to 4 to account for higher mortgage rates. Because anytime mortgage rates increase, affordability decreases. So a household can necessarily afford less home or a lower home price. So, that same household earning $100,000 in 2020 could have maybe bought a $400,000 home. But now, given that mortgage rates have increased, it's more like they can afford a $300,000 home.
Is it,
If that helps.
let me see how to ask this question. Even with the down payment assistance program, is ownership realistically, can a family earning this on this extreme low end, if we don't have houses in that range to purchase in our city, is home ownership really a reality? You know what I'm asking?
That's such a complicated question. It really depends. That is going to be largely a function of the household's ability to repay their mortgage, right? I mean, that's what the lender is looking for in terms of when they're sitting down with a potential borrower and trying to quantify first whether they can qualify for a mortgage, and then secondly, what home price, what their maximum affordable home price is. So it's really going to depend on the ability of that household to demonstrate, say, consistent employment, a consistent lengthy employment history, and to not have, a whole lot of issues with their credit history. So it is really going to depend. It's going to be much more feasible and much more realistic to be able to supply affordable rental units for the lowest income cohorts than it is to be able to transition them into homeownership.
Okay, last question. When we
Yes,
look at
ma'am.
this graph that's in front of us, this diagram, did you differentiate between the different cohorts in the city of Terrell or in Kaufman County? The people that are in these, did you look at the percentages of people that that are in these different categories?
But by household size.
I'm looking at extreme low income. When you look at that, is that a certain percentage of people in our county or in our city versus market
Yes,
rate?
yes.
Did you look at that?
I believe you're referring to the household size charts. They're in the appendix, so the very back of the report, you can see the breakdown of the percentage
Okay.
of households by, household size and geography. So you can see the demand for for homeowners versus renters, just the sheer percentage of households within each of those geographies.
But you
and
didn't look
households.
at the numbers of the people that are within this guideline as far as the income requirements. You didn't say, hey, this percentage of people are here, there. We didn't really look at the demographics that
Yes,
way, did
yes,
we?
yes, I did. That's embedded.
In the
You
back,
can't,
in the appendix.
I didn't include those numbers specifically, but that's embedded in all of the analyses. It's these numbers are determined as a function of comparing the supply of homes or the supply of rental units relative to the demand for those homes or rental units by income cohort. So
Dr. Knapp, Mike
Yes,
Sims
sir.
here. So there are 37 tables in
Right.
the report. I'm curious, it actually does sound like Councilwoman has hit on something that isn't exactly pulled out. Would it be too much trouble to add a table 38 to just give us the exact answer to her question?
Sure,
Yeah.
absolutely. To break down the demand of the
Let me see
demand.
if I can restate her question correctly, and
We're
I'm looking at
talking
her.
about-
Yeah.
2% of the extreme low income people versus 60% of these high market rate people. I need to know that, like, I
Sure,
know we have
sure.
challenges. I know those two areas are our challenges. And, I heard you say that the extreme low income is a pressing issue, but I want to know, what are we talking about? Are we talking about 1.5%
Sure.
versus
That's absolutely
20%
possible.
versus 60%?
Are you asking for what percentage of
Think of it like this.
Terrell falls in each income cohort?
What we're asking here is if she'll give us a table where the rows are what you're looking at here, extremely low income, very low income, blah, blah, blah. And then one version, columns that say City of Terrell, just flat out number of households. And then another one that is the next table that is percentage of households. And if you would do that, we have all the geography stuff, just make it consistent with the other geographies so it's easy to follow in terms of all the other charts, and that'll answer the councilman's question.
Most definitely. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, understood.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Hold on. Let's wait. Let's get everybody an opportunity to speak. Donna Renee, you got some questions for her, yes? Mike?
No, I think from what I'm understanding, we are depending on where you are in your division of cohorts, we are doing well in some areas and than others. But to my colleague, Councilwoman Stephanie, it doesn't tell me in how many, what is the number? How can I appreciate the report, but I'm not sure how I can use it. And so, no, I don't have any questions. It's something for me to really look at and then come up with, how can we use this? This is not gonna, for me, it's not gonna happen tonight, but I appreciate the study. I really do.
So, Dr. Lousy, let me keep you on the line for a moment more and make sure that you're involved in the next little teeny tiny bit of this conversation. Don't lose that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, I'll stay on.
I need her screen. Could we use her screen for a moment?
I'll stop sharing.
Yeah. No, we wanted you to keep sharing.
Oh,
Sorry.
my apologies. I will.
Okay, you guys are fast moving. I appreciate that, but I'm going to be a little slower moving. If you could share your screen again, I would ask you to go to the slide that is the ratio of oversupply, undersupply of affordable homes for first-time buyers by geography, all households.
See the ratio.
First-time home buyers,
Mm-hmm.
oversupply, undersupply ratio.
Yes, sir. I believe it's this.
So just want to make sure everybody understands. This conversation is much bigger than Terrell. There is a very large state legislative effort geared at, because Dr. Knapp's exactly right, this is a very big state and national issue. State leaders are looking at data not exactly the same, but basically telling the same story as that very first column. State leadership is looking at, should we take legislative action to do something related to the problem that she is documenting here under extremely low income, very low income, low income. That 0.4 number there, that 0.5 number there, that's the subject of debate in Austin about should we pass legislation on this topic, okay? So I don't really have commentary on that. I just want you to be aware that that's another thing. So, pardon me, Dawn, if now you could move to that one PowerPoint slide, and we'll keep Dr. Knapp on for just a moment. I think Councilwoman Anderson really has a important little note here at the end for us. Okay, what do we do now? I've never been one to receive a study and then say, well, I don't want to, I don't like a study that we have and then we put on a shelf and it gets dust on it. So how do we avoid putting dust on a very important study by Dr. Knapp? So this is recommended next steps. No need to say that you have to react to it tonight, but you're welcome to. Here's the best suggestion that we as staff could come up with for you. We think that early 2025, we could do a workshop. So we did several big workshops last year, right? You take a day, you take an afternoon, whatever council feels like they might have time for, and I'm just offering this, you don't have to say yes. And we give you basically the following bullet points. Anything you thought was a specific that needed to come out of the study, a little information on what the state law changes might be, what's going on with market trends in terms of who's offering to build what in this city. And we do have some information from the school district because they're also studying similar things. Accessory dwelling units are a half an hour long conversation. Implications for the city housing department. We used to get grants for home ownership for low income folks. Those dried up, they went away. That's a federal policy issue. Multifamily policies, what are we doing with multifamily? Multifamily can be vertical as in a high stack or horizontal spread out and all one story. Live-work opportunities is something that we hear constantly as a comment. Where can I run my business and be an entrepreneur and also live? That might not save me exactly on Dr. Knapp's chart, but it saves me in my life and it gets me somewhere I need to be. Negotiated annexations are a tremendous issue for us because folks who want to maybe negotiate an annexation to come in will have all sorts of opinions all over the page on what their opinions on what type of housing they want to offer. Meeting the need in all the quintiles, how do you do that effectively? Developing income diverse neighborhoods. One of the themes that we've heard throughout the years from this council and from councils before it is, you know, it's a unique thing about the city of Terrell that we have income diverse neighborhoods. We don't have, here's the houses for only this group of demographic. Here's the housing for another group, and so on down the line. And they're all in little pods with walls. So how do we keep that theme up so that we have income diverse neighborhoods? And then how do we take all of that, apply those ideas in greenfield and infill situations? I'm not going to make Dawn and Dr. Knapp go back to it, but think of the PowerPoint slide that Dr. Knapp had for you that was the supply side. You had availability of developable land, regulations and zoning, constructions costs, availability of mortgage, right? Those were the four things that she said were supply factors. You control one. So at least you have something that you have some regulatory power over. That's your planning and zoning rules, right? And so you might choose to help someone apply for a grant, but you might also say, well, primarily, this is going to be about how we do planning and zoning. So the notion would be, how do I apply those to greenfield versus infilled situations? It's one thing to say, here's green land, and it's close to a sufficient amount of water supply, wastewater supply, and road, and maybe we can apply some of those ideas. And it's another one to say you're going to change zoning on an area that is existing development, right? And you try to say, well, how can I do infill there? Those are very different things. And again, that's a half an hour long conversation. So our suggestion would be, if you'd like, don't have to, we would be happy as staff to give you a workshop on this topic sometime early in 2025 so you can start trying to decide, well, what takeaways would I possibly have? We would follow that. I would recommend anything you want to vote on needs to go through your P&Z first because they'll need to vote on your zoning ordinance, right? So we would have to do a very similar or same workshop with those guys, let them come in, let them have access to all that same information, and then we'd have to take those two workshops, try to get some feedback from those two workshops, assemble it, bring it forward, try to have anything that might have come out of all of that. And gosh, it's hard to guess what might come out of those two workshops, right? We've heard a lot, need to digest it, but we would offer that there might be some important things that you want to vote on to come out of all of this, but we probably won't know until we go through the effort of doing those two workshops, and we would bring back things that we'd be responsive to that after that point. This was as best as we could come up with on staff of what to do next, and I'd be happy to get any input on that.
All right, Mike, thank you for the recommendation. I would suggest that the council review these, get back with us. Again, we're talking about 2025, so maybe in our November or December meeting, have some feedback from Mike and staff on which direction you'd like to go. I want to take a moment and thank Dr. Knapp for her presentation and being with us this evening. A lot of good information. Take us a while to digest it all, but thank you for the work that you've put in, and we look forward to talking to you again soon. Anyone
Thank you
else?
so much for having me and for bearing with me. I know this is very dense information, so I really appreciate your patience with it all.
Great job with it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So
Thank
much.
you so much. Take care.
Okay.
Do we have access to that PowerPoint?
PowerPoint, yes, we could,
Okay, can I
yeah.
just-
We will you get it emailed out to everybody. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Another thing, Mike, I was just gonna add, could we add something about review of the zoning ordinances under one of these bullets? Or
Absolutely. That's the whole idea, is to get to that point. Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I saw that on number 3, but I didn't know if that.
Yep, absolutely.
encompassed that, just not having it on top.
And just one last point for me, not to belabor this, but just when I look at the staff recommended next steps, you know, we have the bullet point about developing income diverse neighborhoods. I think, you know, when you think about the fact that our gaps are in the most extreme areas, extreme low income housing and market rate housing, right? That cohort. So it's high-end housing and extremely low-income housing. Let's say I'm someone who can only afford an extremely low-income house. I probably can't afford to live in an income-diverse neighborhood because it's probably going to be beyond my means. And then if I'm someone who, wants a market rate house that's higher end, I may not want to live in an income-diverse neighborhood. So I don't know if having neighborhoods that are trying to meet all of these needs in one neighborhood is going to meet the need we're trying to address here, right? It's almost like, how do you have one neighborhood that meets all income levels needs?
I don't,
It just seems
I think it just kind
unrealistic.
of evolves. It might be an organic movement. What moves, who moves into the neighborhood? I think we just ought to deal with what do we have now? Because neighborhoods change just by the movement of the population. What I'm concerned with, all of these things are busy. This is busy work. I'm not interested in busy work. I'm interested in, we know the problem. We are familiar with our neighborhoods. How do we make it affordable? I don't want to live in an income-diverse neighborhood. I find, for me personally, it's like if the neighborhood is too clean, too nice, something's wrong. If the, there has to be an edge to it somehow.
I see what you're saying.
There has to be.
But I
the
do
thing
think
is-
trying to
is-
meet both extremes needs with one neighborhood, that's going to be
Yeah.
challenging, is my thought.
And I
You know.
think what we should look, I'm interested in, we have a study. All I want to know is, how do we make it affordable for the people who live here? We know that apartments in Terrell, period. Now, somewhere in our ordinances is an ordinance that says a percentage of development, a percentage of apartments within a complex should be affordable. That does not mean, I'm not sure, Denise, I don't think that means you have to be like Section 8. That's not what I'm saying. It means there should be a percentage of 100 apartments that should be affordable. And what is that number? Right now, developers are coming in, if I'm not mistaken, and they're $450,000 homes on Lovers Lane. $450,000 homes over here. Well, if you're going to put in 300 homes, what percentage of that development needs to be affordable? And according to Texas legislature, we cannot say we don't want those kinds of people here, which is how we're moving. That's how things are going. So we need to say, let's do better. Everybody, you want to build a house, you want to build a development, this percentage needs to be affordable housing. Knowing that we are a blue-collar city. We went from farming to blue-collar, and unless the EDC is going to drop some IT work in here, we're not going to be white-collar for a little while. I'm thinking, what does affordable mean for somebody who's a family that's working 2 jobs? The husband's working 2, and the wife's working part-time. We want to have quality of life, but I can't afford quality of life. And then you have the retirees who are just living on their retirement income. So we've got a population that is a sneeze away from working homeless. And how do we turn that around? And so if we're going to say in the future, how do we move forward? I think these are good points that the staff is going to work on, because I probably am going to need some numbers to look at. But the thing is, how do we make it affordable for people who are working minimum wage for the city of Terrell, and they can't afford to live here? I think I have a problem with that. So I don't know how to move forward. And so this is something I need to really read through. I mean, I thank you for giving me the study beforehand. But those are the things I think of. I think of my neighbors who have 4 people working full-time jobs and still can't make rent for a 2-bedroom apartment. That's kind of challenging.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, thank you. Our next item on the agenda is Director of Utilities, DJ Brower's gonna talk about our Poultry Water Tank Project.
Yes, I'd like to call Scott Moore from Friesen Nichols up to
Okay.
assist, because this project started before I was hired under Mike McKeska, and so he has a little bit more history of it than I do. I am learning every day a little bit more, but he has the beginning knowledge. I'd like to let Scott make the presentation
Sure.
at this time.
Go ahead, Scott.
Thank you, thank you. Yep, we're just gonna go through a little bit of history here. I guess I can change it with this, correct? Okay, there we go. So currently, the Poultry Road elevated storage tank is a 1 million gallon steel tank. It's originally built 1969 timeframe. Population was about 14,000 people. So it's in that 50-year service lifetime frame. It's really no longer affordable and feasible to maintain any longer, and you're growing. And so your total population now, you're looking at almost 23,000 folks, if not more by now, and more coming, like as y'all know, every day. And so we're planning a new 2.5 million gallon elevated storage tank, which is very close to the existing tank. So just up the street, just up the road, very similar space, because elevation-wise, that's what works for the tank. So basically, the purpose of this, we're replacing the aging infrastructure before you have issues with it. Trying to be ahead of the game. You lose that tank, you have a major problem. And so we get you a new tank built in while that one's still in service, switch it over, and then demo that old tank and get you switched over to a bigger tank that should last you another 50 years or so. So we're looking at, we're trying to get you a 50-year life out of this facility. So the components of the project, like I said, demo the existing tank. It's a steel tank, so that'll come down after the new tank is in service, working and in service. We're going to construct a new composite 2.5 million gallon tank, very similar to the south tank on 20. It's a little bit bigger, but very similar construction to that tank. And in addition, about 550 linear feet of 16-inch water line, at least 16-inch water line, extend up to the new tank, and that also allows you to serve some surrounding property that's currently not served by the city of Terrell. So it's extending your service line a little bit further and get you access to some more properties to sell Terrell water. So give you a status right now, kind of update. This is a map. It was in the report of 3 of the sites we looked at to put the new tank. We evaluated those sites. Site 1 was the one that we ended up selecting. You can see the star, the northern star there is Site 1, if you can see, it's pretty small. But, so we submitted that draft report back October of last year, and we submitted a final report in June, and that we started moving forward with that property. So the other part of this project is your Texas Water Development Board funding that you replaced. It was one of the projects you applied for years ago under that funding from the Texas Water Development Board. One of the requirements is an EID, which is your environmental information document. That's got to be submitted to Texas Water Development Board, part of the checklist on their funding process. It is currently in its 30-day review period, so we have submitted it. It's open for review right now publicly. We are planning on having the public meeting on December 5th, so public's invited. Open it up to questions, comments. Currently, it's going through Texas Historical Commission, Texas Parks and Wildlife, Army Corps of Engineers. They have opportunity to comment on it now too. So that's part of that EID process, to make sure those entities have a chance to comment on this project. And then, once we get those comments from all the entities, public, we incorporate those comments into the final EID, and we get to submit that to Texas Water Development Board. Should be in December of this year, unless we have an exorbitant amount of comments, but usually we don't. So then, as we keep going to status, we'll start the final design. We submitted that scope and fee this month to the city. We'll either get started on that at the end of this year, first of next year, somewhat around that time frame. And then we will also submit the engineering feasibility report, which is another checklist for Texas Water Development Board. It's kind of, if it'll follow that EID. It gets submitted kind of in the same time with the EID. So as soon as we get that going, we'll submit both of those, start the process further with the Texas Water Development Board. And then the overall schedule, so submit everything to Water Development Board December 2024. So this, a couple months from now, that's what we're looking at. Final design, we will start early 25. It'll go through almost full year. It's a 9 to 12-month process. The reason the fluctuation is we depend a lot on Texas Water Development Board review. They have to review certain things. They have timeframes. Sometimes they take the full time, sometimes they don't, and so it's going to be 9 to 12 months on that. Start construction late 25, early 26, and this tank takes about 2 years to build. So looking at 28, it'd be in service and commission, and the old tank should be down.
Okay.
So any questions about?
When would council need to take action on any of this? We've already done that. Where are we?
We've taken action on the preliminary 50% design engineering plans. You've approved those contracts. I will now be coming back to you with the final design contracts for the engineering portion of it. That'll be coming here shortly. And then once they finish their final design, the actual construction contract will come back to council along with any Texas Water Development Board actions that are needed to close on the loan.
And the funding for the project is coming from?
We're looking at there's an existing Texas Water Development Board loan that we got in 2019. That's really paying for the engineering design. And then construction is going to be a function of how much it actually costs. But right now, we're looking at another loan from the Texas Water Development Board. Due to the increasing population, it'll be a subsidized loan.
We know what that amount is, or?
Right now, we're looking at about $7 million.
Okay. All right. Does anybody have any questions?
I just want to clarify, where the star is on the
Yes.
handout is where it's going to be?
That is, so that's this site here, but yes, that star at the north end of that.
Where's the other one that we're going to be? Is it
You can
close?
see the shadow,
Just south around the curve, that's the existing tank.
the silver circle, that's the existing tank.
So it's
Okay.
very close to that existing location.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep.
Yeah, and if you're familiar with that road, there's a radio tower or a cellular tower across the street. This will be across the street from that.
And that's the corner of the Whit Ranch property, is where the proposed site is.
Okay, thank you.
So this is not gonna come out of our utility fund?
Portions of it may.
Yeah, the idea would be that, let's say we use our 2019 Texas Water Development Board borrowing to complete all of the pre-construction stuff. We end up in the summer of '25. The team shows up and says, hey, we basically got this thing ready to go, and we're ready to go forward with Texas Water Development Board and request subsidized borrowing of the next chunk of money. So just playing that out, let's say for example, that borrowing hits where we actually borrow the money in the first part of FY '26. That means your utility rates in FY '27 will carry the cost of that borrowing.
We have some time to talk about that, right? I'm
Yes, ma'am.
still learning. I don't want anybody messing with our utility money,
It ultimately.
unless you have to.
Ultimately, any water or sewer project will get, whether it's a loan, whenever it's a loan, will get hit by the utility fund because it's a cash-generating asset that allows you to pay back loans. So anything having to do with the utility company, like our wastewater treatment plant, which is being built by McKinnis, that is also a Texas Water Development Board loan. We are paying back that loan every year for the next 20 or 30 years, whatever the loan rate was. And but rather than paying a chunk of $14 million in 1 year, we're paying $250,000 for 20 years, or whatever that payoff rate is.
This is not gonna take away any money from you, DJ, while you fix our pipes?
That's a $64,000 question. I don't know the answer to that right now.
Okay.
My comment is, remember, you also have to maintain elevated storage tanks. The Poetry water tank was built, I think, in 1971, but it might be 73, something like that. 69. I'm so sorry, guys. I should have been here for the presentation. So 1969, it's older than me. I've made that joke before. Okay, so it's older than me. And if you go out and you look in the inspections on it, we need to replace it. It
I
can't
don't
be
mind
there,
re-
right?
I don't mind
Yes.
replacing it. I just know you all have given me enough information to know that I sit on a board of a utility company, and I don't want anyone messing with that money, unless you have to, DJ.
That one I have to, because I'm required by TCEQ to provide a certain volume of water for every person that lives and moves into Terrell.
Okay.
And in order to have the continued growth, we're gonna have to have that tank.
Okay. And it'll be pretty. Thank you.
Right. That's gonna be the next, that's the next presentation I'm really not looking forward to, is what are we gonna put on that tank?
I have a question. You guys are pretty confident that the 2.5 million gallons is big enough? It's
For the, yes,
with the growth and all that, that's kind
yeah,
of.
yeah, that's been modeled and
Yeah, we did
verified.
studies and models of what size you need.
Great. And then with the demolition, is there any way are we gonna include any of that part? How are we gonna fund that? I'm just thinking ahead.
Most of the demolition will be funded as part of the overall construction contract. The only part that we will have to fund directly is going to be anything that's considered a hazardous material. And since that tank was built in '69, there's probably a lot of lead paint on there. We're gonna get that tested, and if there is, we'll have to handle that, and that will be paid for directly out of the utility reserve fund versus the construction dollars.
Okay.
You don't have a guesstimate of what that'll cost?
No.
It's very dependent upon yes, if there's lead found or not.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
I'm just gonna ask the one question my constituent's gonna ask. Is this gonna impact my utility rates? And how so?
We don't know that totally. That's one of the things we met about with Chris Eckert today. And we are wanting to make sure that, no, it doesn't affect the overall water rate, other than what North Texas is going to be doing to raise the base cost that we have every month. But yes, the amount of loans that we have to pay back will affect and determine what we want to do with the water rates. Because there's different options we can do. We can hold them steady and use less for repairs, or we can keep doing the repairs and increase the rates a little bit more. It's a balancing game that we're going to play as we get more information.
'Cause I know we had discussed in our workshop, maintaining that 8% increase and then dropping off to like a 2% increase.
Right.
I don't want to impact that to where we're like, now we're not going to do what we said we're going to do.
Maybe we should try to answer the question this way. The utility rate model you saw at your most recent utility rate workshop assumed we were borrowing money for this project in a future year. And so it did take it into account. Now, do we update the model every year? Do we always need to refine it? Obviously, you've got two guys in front of you who want to double check, triple check, and look at all the numbers. I'm respectful of the question that you asked, Councilwoman, that, we don't want to move forward without knowing specifically the implications. And I would say as they get further down the line of saying, okay, we know for sure the exact construction cost will probably be fill in the blank, you're going to be in a better shape, say, in your utility rate workshop in the summer of 2025 to start honing in on, aha, now I really know the specific. And for me, I would tell you that one of the things there is going to be what happened with interest rates between now and 9 months from now, and what happens with the ability to look at all of this and say, well, that borrowing has to happen in FY25 to hit your FY26 rates, or that borrowing is going to happen in FY26 to impact your FY27 rates. That's a decision.
Well, we have some time.
Yes.
There's no free water tower grants?
Oddly enough, I'm going to tell you, we're going to do our best. If we can find one, by golly, we're going to find
Sweet.
one. So,
I'm
good
excited.
challenge.
Yeah.
Challenge accepted.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
All right.
All right.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, discuss Parks and Downtown Improvement Corporation recommendations for Ben Gill Park multi-purpose and tennis court upgrade renovation. Senior Policy Analyst Samara Mata.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you, I bring a paddock recommendation for the tennis court update that is located out there by the city pool. So in FY '25, the paddock board did some budget planning and they approved the renovation and upgrade for the multi-purpose tennis courts at Ben Gill Park. Maybe if that'll move. There we go. So you'll see here that the city went out for competitive bids. We did receive 2 back. These have been presented to the paddock board, which they did a unanimous approval vote on September 13th. And they are recommending for city council to approve and not to exceed the low bid, which is number 1 of $377,663 for the renovation of the tennis courts. They have some beautiful aerials in your packet. You'll see that these are 2 basketball courts that will be black and bright red. This is 8 pickleball courts, another aerial. This is green and that bright blue. And then lastly, you'll have 2 tennis courts that are also in that green and blue. This will come back to you for a vote at your November 5th meeting, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, good. Does anybody have any questions on this? Funded
No
through paddock.
questions, just very excited to see these items finally make it here.
I'm excited as well, but I do wonder, we discussed this a long time ago, I think, about the pickleball courts. What's been sort of the delay from the paddock board standpoint? Any idea?
What I've heard from paddock board conversation, there's a paddock board member here. I think they've just wanted to get their funding arranged. I think they had some issues to deal with some downtown items that they wanted to clear out. So I think it's just been a matter of cycling through that process. I know that there was an initial presentation to them about colors, shape, types of netting, types of this, that, and the other, where, you know, maybe staff didn't quite hit the mark on what they were hoping for and what the vision was, and so we rejiggered it, came back, did it again. So I don't know that there's one particular thing, so I don't, you want to,
That's correct.
okay.
And I think the biggest decision was the color of the courts for the pickleball and tennis. They want to kind of keep that traditional color. So, yes, we did work through a few things, and everybody was happy on paddock, and we're ready to bring it to you tonight. So, good work.
Sounds good.
All right, thank you. Next item on the agenda is consent agenda. Mayor, council, we can take all of these at once. Is there a motion on the consent agenda?
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
A second.
I have a motion from Donna Renee Anderson, District 2, a second from Stephanie Holmes Thomas, Mayor Pro Tem District 4, to approve the consent agenda as presented. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, let it be known by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous vote of those present. Our next item on the agenda is to adjourn into executive session in accordance with Section 551 of the Texas Government Code to discuss the following. Section 551.072, deliberations regarding real property, and Section 551.087, deliberations regarding economic development negotiations. We are now in executive session.